Okay, so we talked a little bit about what anti-doping is and why it should be enforced, but that raises the question of, if the policies are so strict and if they're being enforced on an international and national level, why are people still getting away with doping? Should the codes and policies be stricter? Should they be more lax? Is there some where we're getting lost in between? And that's a question that I decided to research on. But first, we need to really look at what WADA and the USADA are. WADA was established in 1999 after a doping scandal in the 1998 Tour de France. Their primary role and their mission statement, per their website, is to develop, harmonize, and coordinate anti-doping rules and policies across all sports and countries. So they work with things like the Olympics and other international sports to ensure that their athletes are completely clean when in competition. And the USADA is a signatory of WADA, so essentially they are in agreement with WADA on their policies and their structure to ensure that US athletes are held to the same standard. So now we have to look at what the current policies that WADA upholds are. And they are very strict currently. They're very strict on their laboratory rules as well as their testing rules and policies. And these were updated after the Russian scandal that occurred in 2014, where they found that their laboratory rules were not strict enough, as the Russians were still being able to dope their athletes without WADA finding out. But as of 2024, there were a couple updates that I found on Global Sports Advocate's website. First of all, tramadol, which you probably heard of, was added to the prohibited drugs list, and GLP-1 shots were added to the monitoring drug list. And as of 2021, the FINA website, which is the World Aquatics organization that handles all aquatic sports, they said that attempted complicity was added as a rule violation. Intention to cheat, which is what WADA used to call doping, was changed to intentional doping, and it reintroduced the concept of aggravating circumstances that can result in a different testing evaluation. So this leads to the question of, should doping rules be more strict? Well, as they stand now, they are pretty strict, and you would think that athletes wouldn't be able to get away with doping. But again, as we've seen in certain circumstances, such as with the 2014 Russian scandal, it's definitely possible to still get away with it. And the National Library of Medicine actually did a study just to kind of see how many athletes in a controlled group of people were currently doping. They did a study with about 1,500 participants where 6.5 to 9.2% of athletes in that group reported that they were doping in competition and they had been getting away with it. So yes, as it stands, I would say that the codes and the policies could become more strict, and as we see, they kind of are. There's a whole timeline for rules and policies that are set to be added in 2027 to WADA's policies, and it's definitely something that should make the whole thing stricter and should add a lot more guidelines for laboratory testing and testing itself in terms of getting the samples. So that's something that's going to be definitely interesting to see. And if you were interested in learning more about it, I said this last time, but I definitely would go watch the documentary Icarus. It really dives in to the Russian scandal that occurred in 2014, and it shows a little bit more about how they were able to get away with the scandal and how they were able to compromise the laboratory testing system. And it actually gives sort of like an inside look at what they were doing, because one of the scientists that was actually helping the Russians dope plays a main part in the documentary. So I would definitely go watch that. And this is something that I would definitely recommend doing more research on, because as it stands now, the codes and policies are getting stricter. There are definitely people out there who disagree with this and who think that doping policy should be more lax and should actually be getting less strict. But this is for you to form your own opinion. I personally believe that they should be getting stricter as they are, but I definitely recommend you go do your own research.